Thank you so much for coming out. We're excited to have you here for our August workshop and to welcome our colleagues from the Clerk of the Circuit Court, specifically Eric Larson, who's the manager of Historic Court Records. Also Shannon Fuller, who's here too.
Yeah.
Maybe just want me to put him out.
That's fine.
The town of Balch Library can do what it does to help people research history, genealogy, and the built environment of Loudoun County without our partners at the court records, because like quite legitimately they have like all the good stuff. To look into the legal history of Loudoun County as well as order books, all sorts of things. Eric has been kind in the past to do an annual or 2 tours a year of historic court records for the library. And if you haven't been on the tour, I encourage you to do it because it is really excellent to be able to see the space and explore it with somebody who knows it so well. I'm looking forward to seeing his presentation and hearing him talk more about the historic court records and how you access them. But we'd just like to welcome him and thank you very much for coming and speaking today.
Thank you for having me here. Well, I want to welcome everybody out in the audience and everybody out there in virtual land for attending today's session on an overview of the Clerk of the Circuit Court Historic Records. On behalf of Gary Clemens, who is the Clerk of the Circuit Court, he would like to welcome all of you for joining us today to see one of the most unique collection of court records in the state of Virginia. I'm going to give you just a brief history of why we retain most of our records and why we are one of the few counties left in Virginia has all of our court records dating back to 1757. Of course, I don't know how many of you have actually been to our historic records area, but that's our public room there, and I'll be talking about all the different types of records you see there. Now, the county was founded obviously in 1757, but in 1861, of course, we have the Civil War begins. George K. Fox, who was the clerk of the court at that time, was ordered by the justices. Justices are judges to us today. Ordered George K. Fox to remove at least 20 years worth of the records. That means all the books and all the loose papers. However, George K. Fox moved everything, and he moved them to Campbell County, and that's where they existed for the duration of the war until they came back in August and September of 1865. Because of that, all of our records, we have the vast majority of our records going back to 1757. Had they stayed, likely they would have been destroyed during the war. Loudoun was probably occupied 65 different times, going back and forth between Confederate and Union forces. The other counties around us, especially Fairfax, did not do well. Most of the Fairfax County records were destroyed, so it's hard to actually do research prior to 1861 there. So because of George K. Fox, that's why we're here today with these records. The other nice thing about Loudoun County and with Fairfax County as well, being in more affluent counties, we actually have our own historic records division. So if you go to Fairfax, they have the same setup as we do too. So because of that, we have an historic records division that wasn't established until 2004. The first manager, the person I replaced when he retired, and someone might remember, is John Fishback. John Fishback retired in 2014, and he volunteers 4 times a week with me. So, and actually you'll actually see some of the work he's done. So, I just want to give you a little overview of how Loudoun came about, because a lot of people, when they come in, they want to chain their property all the way back, going way back almost into the 17th century. Well, the problem is okay, here's Loudoun County. It was established in 1757, but prior to that, it was part of Fairfax County. Fairfax County wasn't established until 1742. Then it goes back to Prince William, Stratford, Westmoreland, Northumberland, and York County. So if you're doing a chain back of somebody who may have been here this whole time, you would have to go from county to county to county to county looking for records. And once again, you're at the mercy of how many of these records survived in the other counties during the Civil War, or they could have been destroyed by fire as well. The original land grant that includes a large section of all these counties is right here. This is the land grant, the Fairfax land grant. Dates back to the 1760s, and it stretched all the way from the Chesapeake Bay all the way up into what is West Virginia today. And you can see all these counties at one time were part of the Fairfax land grant in the 1760s. So you can see all the counties that were carved out of that eventually. This is a map done in 1747-45 when the Crown asked for a detailed map of what that grant what existed in that grant. So that's from 1745. If I'm correct, it was, I forget how many millions of acres this whole thing was. Oh, and then on this side,
5.2 maybe something.
5.2 million.
Is that right?
That sounds good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, let's just say a lot of land.
Or you just stick to.
Yeah. This is actually Lord Loudoun right here. Okay, some of you probably seen the horrible caricature of Lord Loudoun from a Gentleman magazine from the 1750s. This shows him as like sort of like a buffoon, which he really wasn't. This is an actual painting of him. We're named after him because he was actually a head of English forces in the French and Indian War, the first few years of the conflict. He received land grants and royalty in a title from George II for supporting the crown during the Jacobin uprising in the 1740s. He's actually Scottish, so of course the uprising was the Scots against the English. So that's actually Lord Loudoun. All right. The type of papers we have in our collection, all right, obviously it's paper. Now pay attention to these right here. These are judgment packets. And the vast majority of what I'm going to talk about today of our records are from these packets. So they're either judgment packets, loose records. If you notice the red tape on here, although this isn't the original, the same red tape actually comes from if you walked into a courthouse here in the colonies of the United States are back in the UK, and you ask for something, a judgment or another record, they would have to go in these bundles and break the red tape. So that's where that actually comes from. So if you come in, and ask for a judgment like you do all the time, we have to break the red tape. Down here, this is just these are deed order books, but the order books, we have order books for deeds, wills, any type of court records, because when these are filed, the orders from the judgment packets or the deeds have to be recorded in court order books. And this is just some of them right here. So this whole type of record keeping lasts until about until the mid 1980s, because in the 1980s we shift to from paper to microfiche, microfiche, and microfilm. That's a microfilm machine. That thing is probably older than some of my staff members, but these cartridges load into that, and that's how we still get stuff off microfilm. Microfiche is actually worse than microfilm. This is hard. But the thing is, as you'll find out, we have all this scanned as well. Jumping into the late 90s, early 2000s, we finally go electronic. As a matter of fact, today, all the records are electronic. We no longer keep paper files. So if you come in and do land research, you'll see this. This is our land records database. All of our deeds and wills are from 1757 up to what's recorded today. It's in the system. The only thing is the system is not available online unless you have a subscription service to it. So it's not free, but you can come in and use it, or you can buy a subscription service to it as well. Below is something new that we're using here. This is a database called Past Perfect, which Balch uses. What we have done is we've done thousands of these packets, and we're starting to get them scanned and loading the information to Past Perfect. It's up online, but we're not really advertising it because we're still doing a lot of cleanup. The reason is a lot of the stuff on our database came from Excel into Past Perfect, and a lot of stuff didn't transfer correctly. So we're going through and we're cleaning it up. But we are into the electronic age with our historic records. Okay, the challenges we face is I mean, for some counties, it's a real challenge. For us, it's not all that bad because the records have been kept fairly well through its almost over 250 years of existence. But some of the challenges we faced are damaged records. These are tax books, and this one is only from the 1880s. And what we have problems here is the bindings come apart. We got wear and tear on the pages. Some of these books had mold damage, and I'll talk a little more about those later. The other one, which knock on wood, we haven't had a problem with, is mold damage. We have very few records with mold damage. You can see it right here. And what we have done, we have separated all of our mold papers from our regular papers because you don't want the spores getting into the good records. So they're segregated from the rest of the collection. And then down here, we actually have some with insects. See this little hole here? Here, it goes from the front of the book to the back of the book. It's an insect that just chewed all the way through it. And then you see some chew down here as well. So not much of that either. Luckily, really the worst conservation we've run into is going to be these land tax books, and I'm going to talk about barrel laminate here in a second. Glue documents, which is really not much of a problem because we don't have many, but this one was a real challenge. This is a 4x4 highway map of Loudoun County in 1937. What's important about this is this lists all the public, or I should say, federal, state, and local highways and roads. Also, it gives a breakdown of what roads are paved and what are not. It's still used today because a lot of title researchers doing research go back and they'll look at these, especially out in this section here, in western section, and see who actually had the responsibility for those roads. Because to this day, sometimes, some of these roads are still not really kept by the county, but are kept by the owners around them. You'll see something here. We're having this whole thing conserved. This was a challenge because it was glued to particle board. The glue was probably an animal base or a rubber type glue. It was stuck on there. And then the wood was in two sections. So it started to split right down the middle. So we got it off just in time. We haven't received it back yet. Down here, we have tape documents. This starts showing up in like the 1920s and 30s and goes all the way up almost to the 1990s where they use Scotch tape. A lot of ours, we've been lucky because the tape was so brittle, it just came right off. If it doesn't, then you have to fall back on the original to a conservator, a conservative company that come in and actually remove that tape professionally. The other things we run into is paper clips, staples. We move all that stuff. The other one we do have some problem with is leather or red rot or leather rot. This is what the original books would have looked like, and we still have a handful of them left that are still in the original binding. What it is, it's just a breakdown of the leather. Now remember, these are animal skins on here. It could be cow, it could be pig. But after a while, if they're not kept properly, it just starts flaking off and breaking off. And you can see like down here, stuff that's actually come off. Most of the time, these covers are beyond repair. So when we have the books repaired, we don't even keep the covers because they're in such a horrible condition. Okay. Now, besides the loose papers and our tears, and that are the land tax books that were needed conservation, the other obstacle, and this is everybody ran into this obstacle from local archives to state all the way up to federal archives, is barrel laminate. It was basically, it's just a laminate that this gentleman here, barrel laminate, William Barrow came up with. It was from Virginia Tech. And they thought he came up with a laminate and it just laminated the pages. And this is actually the machine here. I mean, look at this machine. It's humongous. But yeah, they laminated it between two sleeves and I couldn't really get a decent shot. But this is a book that's still laminated that hasn't been done. You can somewhat see the laminate on the pages. And if you look here really closely, you can see the edges of the laminate here. The whole book, at least a third of our deed, will, and land tax books were laminated at one time. The bad thing about that is they actually did this all the way up into the 1970s. They started noticing some bad vinegar smells, the best way to describe it. And what it was is that the laminate was reacting with the ink and the paper and it was breaking it down. And it does, it smells just like a bottle of vinegar. If you come to one of our, preservation First Fridays, we actually have a page out that you can actually smell. So, but that was a real problem. So it's also a very expensive problem. So what happens is we have to send it out for professional conservation. And these are actually shots of some of our documents being conserved down in North Carolina. So this little conservation buffet is, there's a solution. They put the documents in, they soak it, then you notice she just then peels the laminate right off of it. This is the document after the laminate has been removed, and then she is spraying it to deacidify the paper. And then once that's done, then they put it in, this is called a post binder, and these are Mylar sleeves that the pages are put into. The one thing about this time period, and really up into the Civil War and after, the paper we're using is like parchment, which is a linen-based or cotton-based papers, which will last a lot longer than tree or bark or what they call rag paper. So we have documents like from the 1950s and 60s that just fallen apart because it's on that really high acidic paper, and they're just falling apart. And here I got stuff from 200 years ago or more. It's still, once we got the laminate, it's still like brand new. So in the long run, this stuff will last much longer than anything today. Okay, the book conservation project. So what we had to do is we had to send out most of our books. And you can see down here, these are all glued together. These are the pages. Now, for over 100 and some years, people were just coming in, opening the books, shutting the books, opening the books, and they're this big. Sometimes the pages folded up, they got tore, they got bent, pages got placed out of order. Then each tax district was divided up by a piece of cardboard. And what would happen is the cardboard actually would bleed through, like you see here. And sometimes it could bleed through 1 to 6 pages. And of course, then it becomes very brittle. So what we did is we sent these off. Now they didn't have to deacidify them, and then put everything, and then did all the repair work on the pages, then put them in Mylar sleeves like our deed and will books. And the books they went from this to this. So this whole project here, deed books, land tax books from 1850 to the last one in 1991, the project was almost $150,000, but it was worth every penny we paid for it. Some of the books were in good enough condition that John Fishback, my volunteer, actually was able to take them apart, and we did our own conservation work. Now, here's that map where it was glued. Here's the map that's been removed, and conservation work has already been completed. They're going to place it in Mylar, and they're actually building a big acid-free box for it. And it should probably be back by September. This is quite a task. This was exciting. I've been working for 10 years to get that done. In-house conservation we do. Okay. Everything up to the 1950s are in judgment packets. Now, for most of us, remember files when we went to the doctors or when the courts, it were just in regular files, just open them up and there was all the records. Well, up until like World War II and after, a lot of courts kept their papers in bundles like this. This cabinet here is one of the cabinets they used to store all the deeds in. These are deed packets here. So what happens is staff, basically John Fishback does all the work, that's John right there. He takes these packets, puts them in a spa tank for usually overnight. And you put them in, there's water at the bottom, then there's another bin we put the documents in. We put the lid on top, the paper absorbs some of the moisture. By the next morning, we stick them underneath something heavy for a couple of days, and then they're flat. So, and once they're flattened out, then John, what he'll do, these are some of the tools we use. yes, we use pliers. And screwdriver, because sometimes of the staples and that they have in it. He'll take that and then he'll mend it. Actually, right, he's working on a tax book right here. He's mending the pages. And what he's using is, it's called a rice tape, which is this material here. This is a little iron he puts on there, and a rice tape, he just then repairs the tears. Now, rice tape, you can reverse it, you can take it off without any damage, plus it's an acid-free material. So we use it in-house to repair a lot of our judgment packets and loose papers. They use it at big conservation companies to restore books and other large documents. So after we're done with this, then this is actually, this is a will packet. Here, they're flat filed. We index these. The files on the front have all the information, and then flat file put in boxes and then stored on shelves right here. Right here is just will packets. There's 132 boxes, I believe, of will packets right now, stretching from 1757 up to 1954. We're almost done with the project. And then what happens is, when this is done, we then put it in the past perfect. And then we did get a small grant to do scanning of our will packets from 1757 to 1867. We do professional digitization. It's really hard doing it in-house because we are busy, so I can't really get my staff to spend enough time. So what we do is we farm most of our documents out. Right here is just a list of the major papers we have scanned. We went through and scanned what we believe were the most important, but also the ones that are being requested the most. Because what that does is, when somebody wants a copy, we can email it now, or if they want a copy, we can just print it out. We no longer have to take the copy from the file, put it up on the copy machine. Same goes for will and deed books as well, because all of our will and deed books are scanned. The land record books our land tax books are scanned too. Before that, we could never make copies until we got them conserved. But we have the key records here that you're going to use in genealogy research, and we're adding more. This picture you see here. This is actually a big project we're doing now with marriage applications, and they're actually doing those in house. And this is the company. They bring their scanners down and they scan in the courthouse. Now we'll get into research. Okay, we encourage our visitors to start the research at home, because you can do quite a bit at home. Online on our webpage, we have the key historic records spreadsheets. So these are Excel spreadsheets you can go through. You can look for them. They have a session number. So if you say John Smith, I want this document from a criminal record. It has a number and a code. You can just email us, and then we can take care of it. And you can pay for it online, and then we just email it. The other big chunk of records are chancery records. Chancery records have all been indexed and scanned by the Library of Virginia from 1757 to 1912. So unless you want to see the original, you can do all this research at home, plus the copies are free. If you come and see me, I have to make you pay. So, but the copies are free. Here, you can actually download PDFs into zip files. So it's a really nice system. And a lot of genealogists and a lot of land research, family research uses chancery records. The other thing,
if you can read them.
If you can read them, right.
The online records are sometimes harder to read.
Mm-hmm. They are. And what we're also noticing too is scanning's gotten a lot better. These were done about 15 years ago, yeah. I think so. So we run into that problem now. So you can look at our indexes, you can look at the chancery. You can look then at the data. This is the Loudoun County Assessor's database. Okay, on this, if you're doing a chain back on a piece of property, we always encourage you to start with the current the current landowner. Start with the current landowner and you start chaining the property back. For about maybe 50 to 80 years, you might get lucky and each deed will give the previous deed. Eventually, you're going to have to go to the index books to find the names. But you start here. This is free. This is on Lime. And what it does is it gives you the information on the property, the owner, but it gives you, you can see here, this is a big instrument, a 15-digit instrument number. If you wanted a copy of that, you can just email that to us. If you're working, if you got the land subscription database, you can actually pull these numbers, plug them into this database, and can chain back on the land record system if you have a subscription. But you could start this at home, get the information in here, come into my division, and these are free, of course, in-house, and you can start chaining back on this computer. So this is the only link that's not available to the public without a subscription. But all of these are excellent sources to do research before you come in. Now, some of the stuff we have, if you're doing genealogy, we got the deeds. Okay, all this stuff is scanned, but you're allowed to look at the original deeds. But if you need a copy, we're going to print out the scanned version. We got all the will books. There's Shannon, and they're all on the land records site, and all these are digitized as well. Vital records. Now, vital records, actually, most of them are scanned now, but you can go through. Now, so I'm going to tell you a little bit about vital records. We always get questions on somebody being born in 1800 or before. Keep in mind, there's no vital records like we know it anywhere in America until the 1750s, okay? Prior to that, you're at the mercy of family Bibles or records or whatever. In 1753, Virginia starts keeping track of all births and deaths. And they will do this up to 1896. Then in 1896, from 1896 to 1912, there was no birth or death records in Virginia. That's a whole nother topic to discuss, so I'm not even going to get into that. But we have everything, birth and death from 1853 up to 1866, okay? After that, the Library of Virginia will have the registers. There's no like death certificate or birth certificates with these early ones, but the registers are just as complete as a certificate. Tells everything on name, how the person died, where the person was born, everything you would see on a modern birth certificate is on there. And most of this stuff, like it has been scanned. So if you come in and you wanted copies of it, it's no problem. We can do that and also email them to you. The other one, of course, is the tax books. The tax books now, since they've been conserved, are more accessible. Now, if you're researching land and you're looking at deeds, but a lot of people ask, how old's my house? Well, most of the deeds, 99% of them just give you meets and bounds. And those meets and bounds are usually just to the willow tree to the pile of stones. There's very rarely any information about structures. And if there is, it's usually just boilerplate information. So what you would have to do if you wanted to see, well, when did the structure occur? When did it expand? You would start with the land tax books and go through and find that owner. And if you see a spike under the dwellings, that's telling you, well, there was a new structure or addition was added to that dwelling at that time period. That's about the best you can do, unless you come to Balch and someone has done a house file of a particular house or property. You can always check here about that as well. Also keep in mind, our tax books only start in 1751. The Library of Virginia has everything before that, but Balch has everything prior to that on microfilm. Tax books are great not only for land and dwellings, also personal property. So prior to the Civil War, all the enslaved people are listed in there because they were taxed as well, just like agricultural products are animals. So if you go in there, you can find enslaved property tax on enslaved crops, clocks, jewelry, anything that had profit to it. The county taxed it. So nothing new. So they found a way to tax. So they were going to do it. So these books would have not only the land tax, but also the personal property tax. Now, the court order books, these are interesting because unlike today, we have court every single day now, but really up until almost the, to the 20th century, court only met first couple of weeks of the month. So what the clerk would do is he would keep an order book and he would write everything down that went on that day. So if someone brought in a deed, that's recorded in there. If someone came in collecting like payment because they did some work on the courthouse, that's in there. Any free black papers, anyone's being free emancipation, that's going to be in there. Deed recordings, will recordings. It's really what it is an encyclopedia of the courthouse or the court procedures. And it's really interesting. It's just fun to just sit down and just read through them, some of the stuff that's in them. And they go up until 1904, because in 1904, there's a constitutional change in Virginia that really just established the court system we have today. So there's no order books after 1904. Then also keep in mind these court order books too. If you want to know, about laws, regulations, taxes, this is where you go, because prior to 1868, the justices or the judges were not only your judge and jury, they were also your Board of Supervisors. So anything that had to do with taxes, regulations, law enforcement, a primitive school network, Board of justices took care of that. And that's what's in these books. So in 1868, under the new Constitution, all that was split out. So like today, if people they come to us asking about school records, we won't have any. After 1868, that's all part of the county and the school system. Roads and that, if you're researching roads after 1868, you go to the minute books for the Board of Supervisors, which are scanned and they're online, but they're not indexed. So that's a FYI there, because everything changes in 1868. Then we have specialty order books. Some of the specialty ones here, I don't think you really see it. That's our record of free Negroes from 1841 to the Civil War. That's quite unique. It lists all free blacks that were either free or were registered in the county as free. We have titleable books. This is a head tax that existed between 1757 till it was done away with in 1786. And that's all these books here. And then we have our guardianship books right here. Guardians doing research. If you have a family member further back that had to be placed in a guardianship, we have the books. We have the loose papers that go with it. Can't see it here, but we have what's called a rough minute book from 1782 and 83. That was kept by the clerk, and it records most of the reimbursement to county citizens during the 1781 campaign in Virginia that ended the Revolutionary War. That's Yorktown. We supplied a lot of food, horses, supplies, and even transportation to POWs coming back from the siege of Yorktown. And that whole book is like 60 to 70 pages, just from one person after another, which is really interesting. Okay, now the loose records. This is, once again, apologize. This is all of our loose records right here that we have in our database. Now, the most important ones you're going to use, of course, in research will be like chancery records here. Once again, it's hard to see, but this is a wonderful example of a chancery case, because this shows you how you actually read a judgment packet. Because this is a judgment packet. All this is coming from judgment packets. And on the very front, like this, and this, it has all the times that it met in court and what happened from it. So this one, I believe, started in 1834 and lasted till 1838. And it just lists everything that went on in each court session. And that's how you find out, what was occurring within the case. And then inside these cases, just like a modern record, you have your bill of complaints, your answers, depositions, which are excellent, subpoenas for people who had to show up for the case. In land cases, they usually have a nice 4-color drawing of a platter, a land record that's dividing up property. If there's publication orders, Those are listed in there, and this is what's good for if you're doing house research, and the publication orders are about this big, it's just a little snippet. It will list the size of the land, but also what structures are on the property. And this is nothing new. They still do publication orders today, just like they did back then. So Chancery Records, once again, is a gold mine. Here's a slave record just to show that they come in all shapes and sizes of these loose papers. This one was for somebody who put their slave up for collateral and defaulted, and they came and sheriff came and collected the person to either one until the guy paid, or the court would then order the slave to be paid off to pay the debt. This is a page from one of our free black papers. It has the certificate number, which is really amazing. The certificate numbers start at 1 in the 1750s and go all the way up. I can't remember what the last number is. And each one of these then has a certificate number, but it also says the witness, who witnessed them being freed, who freed them, and then also a physical description of the individual. So this is a great source of research if you're doing African-American research here in Loudoun County. Indentured and bound out children. Okay, now all of us have some type of skeletons probably in our family closet. So bound out children, we'll start with that, usually means the person was probably born out of wedlock. And they're actually called bastard children, that's what they call them. So when they're bound out, it's usually through the overseer of the poor would bound that child, and I'm saying child, out to a farmer or a tradesman to learn a trade. And this is for free blacks as well as for white people. So that's what a bound out means. It's going through the overseer and the person that's being bound out. Indentured means if I had a child and I didn't make much money and I didn't think I had a good enough career to pass on to them, I could indenture them out to somebody in the community to learn a trade. And I think we're all familiar with indentures, and they're pretty popular even up into the 1870s, which is kind of funny because it usually starts dying out in the industrial age. But of course, there's no industry in Loudoun County, obviously. So, but we have all these have been scanned through. These are all indexed. Now, everything I'm talking about here is actually indexed on our webpage, so you can look them up. Then, since we're in the 250th of the American Revolution, this is a front of a paper of a former soldier asking for the court to prove in an affidavit that he actually served, because what he needs to do is get the court to file an affidavit saying, yes, this person served in the military. He then takes this, serves it to the War Department, then he gets his pension. I mean, you can say the pension records, but they don't tell you if he's getting his pension. This is just step one. Pension records are with the War Department, or with the National Archives today, I should say. So that's what that is. We have quite a few of these. And as the years go by, they loosen up the qualifications for claiming a pension. So that's why you'll see more and more, especially late, 30 to 40 years after the war. The last one we see is in 1859, where a family's claiming a land grant that their father had got during the Revolutionary War. What happened was he got married again to someone much younger and had a family. So that's what we see it happening in 1859. Then this last one here, these are fun too, because like I said, we all probably have skeletons in our closet. These are criminal papers, and we have all of our criminal loose records indexed from 1757 all the way up until 1955, the year they did away with the packets. So you can go in there. I mean, most of them are public disturbances, drunk, selling liquor without a license, stuff like that. Yes, there's murders in there, but there's a handful. There's not that many, maybe 4 or 5 a year. And there's nothing in there. It'll say, oh, that person was, hung at the courthouse. For the most part, someone will actually state that they were sent to either Richmond or Williamsburg. Williamsburg was the county seat until 1780, then Richmond is. So yeah, we have one. The most famous one, of course, is Charles Hamilton Houston murder trial. What was his name?
George Crawford.
George Crawford. Thank you, George Crawford. Yeah, George Crawford. One of the most famous criminal cases we have is George Crawford, And of course, that's why Charles Hamilton, the courthouse is named after Charles Hamilton Houston, because he was an African American lawyer who challenged the white jury system. So it was a game changer in American criminal court system. So yeah, we have plenty of these. Some of the best ones are someone disturbing the peace at a church rally. He's showing up drunk, and then they get arrested for public disturbance. So there are some interesting. Okay. Before I move on, because actually I've basically come to the end of just telling you what problems we have with the papers, what type of research we do, that you can do. So I'm going to open it up to questions now. So, no questions.
I have one.
Yeah.
I research title all the time, and I always run across special commissioner to the court or some type of title.
Oh,
will convey land.
right. What happens is, a special commissioner is usually is appointed by the court system. You see them all going all the way back to the beginning, because usually what happens is that person dies, and 9 times out of 10, this person never had a will. So a special commissioner is appointed to break up the property, verify who the family members are, heirs to the family. Special commissioners sometimes are appointed, and I've seen some recently were appointed because they can't figure out who the owner of a piece of property is. So they appoint a special commissioner, and they do a chain back to find out who it is. So they're appointed by the court. And you see them all the time, really, in will cases. And when that happens, it's a special commissioner, it turns into a chancery case. So, and then when you're researching, say he's breaking up the property, say John Smith is the commissioner appointed, then if you're looking for the deed, it's usually John Smith sells 2. It's not originally. So,
you also during your discussion said that sometimes the chancery records have plats of properties that were transferred.
right. If you go to the website, the Chancery website, the Library of Virginia, and pull it up, on the front cover, every file has a white acid-free file with all the information on the case. On the Chancery ones, if it has a plat, it'll be in bold, it'll say plat on it. If it doesn't say plat, then there isn't one inside.
And they're indexed by name.
Yeah, by name. Keep in mind, if you think a chancery case started like that one I showed you in 1834, if it says it started in 1834, that's not where you look. They indexed them by the year they finalized the case. So this one in particular was huge, but didn't have a plat to it. So this was one where a will wasn't provided by the deceased, and then the family were fighting over what was left. Interesting chancery case. Person dies right before the Civil War. He didn't have a will, so they appointed an administrator, a special commissioner, and that person took the entire estate, invested it in Confederate money and bonds. So in the chancery case, we have all the bonds and money from the estate. So after the war, the family tried to come back to court and say, well, we want our money. They couldn't do anything. The war's over. Confederacy doesn't exist anymore. And then there's a hidden clause, I bet you most of you, and I didn't know this until a few years ago, in the 14th Amendment, that states that no debts of former Confederate states were to be repaid. So yeah.
Where do you find the inventor and bound outs? Are they in that list of collections there? Or?
There's an index on our website for that. What I'm showing you here, this is our list of collections in our Past Perfect website. It is on the web, but we don't advertise that much simply because we're cleaning up a lot of material from it. But yes, so now those are indexed in an Excel spreadsheet. If you come in, we can just run the name through our database too. And these are all scanned as well.
Which kind of piggybacks back onto this question, would the index for the indentured and bound out be detailed enough to find a name?
Yes, it would be. The spreadsheet will have the name of the person who's indenturing the person out, and the name of the person who's gonna take him under his wing as an indentured. And then sometimes it'll be some information on what the trade's gonna be. And then they sometimes get really lucky and it'll state what that person shall receive when the indenture was over. If you don't see all that in the spreadsheet, it doesn't mean it's not in the paperwork. So if you go to the paperwork, it will probably tell you all that stuff, so.
Why did the Library of Virginia digitize the chancery cases but not the common law court cases, the other ones?
Because since you're dealing with family names and land, the chancery is, see that, okay, you think there's chancery and there's civil, okay? All right, and for 1757 up to 2006, we actually went on a two-file system, chancery and civil. In a modern sense, what is a chancery case? Well, besides wills and disputes over land and that, the big one, of course, is divorces. That's like considered chancery. And it's a bill of complaint, which means a complaint is filed. Usually what happens in that is the parties, with the help of the courts, will settle this. It's usually never, if ever, taken to trial, okay? It's settled out of court or in the courtroom itself. Civil cases, the best way to describe those are petition cases where you petition the court or you petition someone to pay a debt. That can be settled by parties, or it can be settled by the judge, or it can be settled by a jury. Now you can see where that's very confusing. So in 2006, they plugged them together. So today, chancery and civil is all one case. So, but that's the big difference. Petition is civil, chancery is bill of complaint.
I have a question. So I was doing work for the parcels in the Air 2 parcels that have a lot of wood lots, or like Civil War history lots that didn't have the specific owner listed or anything like that. And I was just wondering if you're doing work with that.
Aha, you're talking about the Short Hill, aren't you?
Yes. I am.
Okay. All right. Short Hill, in a nutshell, Short Hill is a nightmare. It's a group of it's a group of land, it's a group of lots that go up on the Catoctin. And what they were called wood lots because a lot of people would just back a long time ago would buy them and just use it as wood and just pull the wood out. And a lot of times when the person's deceased, it would never pass on to anybody else. So there's a whole string of lots going up that, the whole Catoctin range there of just lots. I mean, they're like 12, 14 acre lots. They're not very big. And yes, there's no solving that problem. Our best title researcher, I don't know if any of you know Jeff Ball, who really is what has done a lot of research on the Short Hill. He's been stumped by it too. So yeah, we get people coming in, we still do, because they see that on a parcel and they say, "Oh, the lot's only $14,000. That's a bargain in Loudoun County. You can't even buy a stamped piece of property in Loudoun County for $14,000. Reason they're so cheap, they're landlocked. If they're landlocked, they're basically a useless lot because you can't get to them. And then you have to take into consideration, if you could get to them, will that land perk for water and septic? You have to worry about that. And then, of course, access is the big one. And what happens a lot of times, people buy, not ask questions, thinking they can go through an existing neighbor's property to get to it. No. Now, the research you could do is go back in time, which a lot of people have done, to try to find if there was ever a road that linked this lot to the Short Hill lot. And, believe me, it's a nightmare. Don't. When you see a lot for like $12,000 or something like that, it's too good to be true. So you know a lot about that. To answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay.
That there's nothing you can do about it.
No. Nothing more?
Wow.
Sure.
I researched a lot of the original streets for the town.
Mm-hmm.
Any tip that you can provide?
For the streets in the town, actually, there's something on the county website, and I think it's linked on our website. It tells you who maintains the roads in Loudoun County. It's a color-coded chart, shows all the roads in Loudoun County, if it's private, public, and stuff like that. So it's a really nice map, and they usually update it about once every 6 months. So.
Could you say more about the road cases and how are they indexed?
Oh, okay, the road cases.
Yeah.
Okay, the road cases are like in 5 different categories, but the real big ones is the road petitions or road bills. And this is when they're petitioning for a road or petitioning or they're asking for a road from the county, or the court would approve it. And in these files, it would have like the proceedings of the case, saying, if there actually was a road, sometimes it'll include a plat or a survey of the land where the road's going to go. There's one in particular called the Prince Road case, which raises its head every so often. And there was supposedly a road that went over the short hill, and it was called the Prince Road. No one's ever proved that that road was actually sanctioned by the courts or from the county. And that started in 1830, and I think that continued up into the 1890s. So yeah, these cases, not only if you look at them, it give meets and bounds who the property is and maybe a beautiful plat. Recently with the White's Ferry case with the ferry, they came in and they researched a lot of our road records and bridge records that had to do with the White's Ferry area to prove if that that was actually sanctioned to be used as a ferry crossing. And so they looked at all those, and actually, if you're really interested in, don't come to me for the court case, go to the one that was ruled on about 4 or 5 years ago, because the civil case on White's Ferry has everything that's from our collection in it as exhibits. So it's a beautiful court case to really learn the history of White's Ferry. And like I said, after 1868 for like roads and that, a lot of that thing goes to the county. Then keep in mind in the 1920s, you get into the modern road system where the federal government takes over the roads. The state then turns over roads to the county for maintaining. So there's an evolution, especially in the Depression area, where the roads come into responsibility for the counties and not the state. And then some of the roads were federal as well.
When would they go back to very beginning?
Yeah, they go back to 1757. And we do have some road cases that show up even in the 20th century. But most of the people researching them are prior to the Civil War or right after. And a lot of people pull the short hill. So.
Yeah, I mean, I've only looked at a few of them, it's often by accident, but they're really interesting because they list, if commissioners are appointed, it's going to be people who live along that road, right? So
right.
It tells you who lived, who were neighbors, who were the people there. There's a lot of more information in there than one would think.
Yeah, and like that Prince Road case, what's great about that, the platform is probably about 6 or 7 feet long. Because what they did is they drew it and then they pasted it together to make the whole length of where the Prince Road case was going to be.
Prince, is this after the family name? Prince? The Levy Prince?
What's it, Nathaniel Prince?
No,
Yes,
Nathaniel.
yeah, Nathaniel Prince.
Yeah.
So don't ask for it.
It was fascinating.
Some of the road hands, we have road hands files, and they're just thousands of them. And all they are like little slips of paper like that. And the way it worked, if you owned a piece of property here, that whole frontage was your responsibility. You had to do the road work. So sometimes they would hire out people to inspect the roads or to actually work the roads. And we have the list of all these different people who worked like along Snickersville Gap or, places like that. Or if they did maintenance work, they could actually come back into the county and collect on some of the material like stones and horse and wagons that they use. But
overseers.
Yeah, overseers of the road. A lot of our criminal cases are overseers who never went out and inspected the roads, so they brought them to court for not doing what they were appointed to do. So
I got a couple of questions from online. First question is, where would I research an owner or owners of a business in the 1950s?
okay, the best you can do there is that we don't have business records. So I take that back. You could look in our charter books and see if the company was actually chartered. Sometimes a lot of them weren't. It's really just like taking the property, the current property where it is, sort of chain it back and to look at what was actually done on the property for its business. We had one just last week for Round Hill, actually. Used somebody traced the property back to the Prohibition to find out if there was a story was it was a speakeasy there. And they chained it back, and yes, it was, found out it was like a grocery store. Now, if it was a speakeasy, you would never know anyway, so. But, so sometimes you can find them through deeds, you can find them through the, charter books. Sometimes what's interesting is, if a business, and this is getting back before 1950, from like this especially 19th century, there's a lot of business people put their merchandise up for collateral, and they had to file it in what we would call a deed of trust. And in that it would list, there's one by Samuel Boss was like the king of mortgaging his property. And he was a merchant here in Loudoun County and Leesburg. And he would list everything that was in his store because he put all that up as collateral to his deed of trust. So that's another way is look at old deeds of trust to see if it was a store, they're going to put all that stuff up as collateral. So that's one way.
But individuals could do that too.
Yeah, individuals could do that as well. Like we have a lot of deeds of trust, especially from the 1830s and 40s, where a lot of enslaved owners had put their slaves up for up as collateral in mortgages. So, or for deeds of trust. Simple reason is the slaves are actually worth more than the property. So that's why you see a lot of that in the 1730s and 40s. Economy wasn't that good either. So.
Right, and then the second question is from Erin. She has copies of deeds of property her third great grandfather bought and sold in Loudoun County. How does she locate the actual property and any extent houses from deed info, which describes the property as north or south of the turnpike and adjacent to so-and-so's property?
Oh, yeah. All right. Okay. That's a great question. Actually, it's a very common question. The best you can really do is get an idea of where that property is today. Okay, and then you find out, and there's GIS tools on the assessor's page where you can look at maps in Loudoun County, the assessor's map in Loudoun County, roughly figure out where that property was, take whoever owns that property, and then you got to start going boom, boom, chaining that thing back. And then what can really get complicated is you might get to a point where the property didn't come through a deed, but came through a will. And if it didn't come through a will, it may have came through a chancery case. It's very difficult, especially in this county, that where land has been divided so much. Now it's somewhat easier, so to speak, in the western part, but if you're chaining back anything east of Leesburg, I mean, you start off with 1,000 acres and then it goes down to 30 acres in these subdivision plats. So it's really difficult. So it's really, you just got to chain the deed back.
There's also Win Sapper's tax map.
Oh, yes, the Win Stafford map of 1860. Yes, the Win Stafford map of 1860. So,
Thank you.
all right. Wow. No more questions. You don't have a question? Nothing? Okay. Any comments?
The flyer advertising this talks about Gary Clemens' vision for the records and so forth. How that's been fulfilled. Is that basically that's what you've been describing? But
Yeah, I mean,
can you say more about what his plan?
I mean, when he became clerk, and then with John Fishback got involved in it, he envisioned, because all these records were kept with every other record in the courthouse. For example, if you go to any other county outside of, Loudoun or Fairfax or Prince William, you're going to go to the civil counter or the land counter where they handle all the modern stuff. And chances are you're not going to get same-day service like we have. So what Gary's vision was to take that, establish a department like Fairfax, have all these records separated so they could be stored properly and conserved, and then eventually be digitized and indexed. So people can come in right off the street, or now most of our customers are online to do the research. So that was his vision, to take all of that. And, John helped with that. And they pulled all those records together in 2004. And since 2004, you've seen how we've expanded from a department that's no bigger than this room into underneath of the law library. And then I have 3 storage rooms now. And to give you an idea, when I started in 2007, we had 31 10-drawer cabinets filled with those judgment packets, 31 of them. We're down to 13. So that's in just less than 20 years, we've whittled all that down. The main parts of the collection has been scanned. What we're doing now is actually sort of moving towards being somewhat of a museum to display some of our material. If you come in now to the clerk's office up on the 3rd floor, we have a nice display on World War II, Loudoun County World War II, using our DD 214 forms that Abigail here indexed for me last year. And it's a nice exhibit showing where people came from, where they joined, where they were stationed. And matter of fact, we're going to have another exhibit on that on September 5th. So we do it like an exhibit every 3 to 4 months upstairs as well. So we're sort of moving towards that as well, being just not only an archives, but a museum on top of that.
So Liz asks, how can members of the public support your office and all the great work you are doing?
You want to repeat that? I'm not going to say that. I mean, yeah, you can actually get a hold of Mr. Clemens and make a donation to our collection. We do have a small, it's not a foundation, but a small account that we've had since the 250th anniversary back in 2007, where we sold shirts and stuff like that. And the money from that went into that. We still use it. And we did a couple of years ago, there was a golf fundraiser that raised some money for us for our conservation efforts. The other thing too is how do we get our money? I mean, that's a legitimate question. Besides donations, I mean, a lot of our conservation work is all of our conservation work doing out of house. All that's being paid for by the Library of Virginia grant, most of it. Where's that money come from? Well, when you come in and file for certain records in the file new documents in the state, there's a fee on there, like a preservation fee. I think it's $3. That goes into a general pot that then all 120 clerks every year will apply for grants to get money from that pot to conserve our records, our scanner records. I've also used private donations. The Daughters of American Revolution is a big one. They've not only scanned all of our order books from the beginning up to 1800, they also did the titleable books, conservation and scanning. They also conserved about 5 barrel laminate books, order books from the Rev War period. So that we go in that direction too. So BAR. We also got money for the road case is a good example in our enslaved papers. That was paid for by Al Van Hyke, yes, Al Van Hyke gave us the money for that project to get them scanned. Our free black records were scanned through a Virginia Humanities grant. That's through the state and University of Virginia. So we got money through that. So and then we also have something technology fund money. That's money that's another fee. When you go into a court and file certain documents, there's a technology fee goes in a general pot for all 120 clerks to use for scanning purposes or electronic purposes like databases. We've been able to use some of that for scanning. So we got a lot of scanning done that way. Then the tax books was just we asked for a special addition to our budget a few years ago to do our tax books. So that was through the Board of Supervisors. So, we're going through a lot of different areas. And like I said, we're lucky because we're in a affluent county that we have all these different areas that we can go into. For a lot of the counties in Virginia, a lot of them, all they really have is, the Library of Virginia grant and then a small amount of technology funds. So yeah, that's how we get our money. Yeah, I would, you're planning to leave your state to us, right?
Yeah.
No, but yeah, if the person wants to, they can contact Gary Clemens, our clerk, about that. Right.
So what you're just saying is that Fairfax and Loudoun are the only counties in the state that have a separate division for stuff.
Prince William does too, yeah. And
even the big ones like Henrico and stuff.
Interesting. So,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
So is there staff that's dedicated to helping people that's doing this type of research? So if you were to start online, but you run it, I'm not very technical, so, if you start online, you just run into a problem, do you pick up a phone or do you send an email saying, I'm trying to do this, can you help me? Or even when you come in, is there?
Yeah. That's the other nice thing about our department too. When Gary created it, he created a staff for it. So actually it's me, Shannon, and then my other employees back at work. There's 3 of us and we handle the questions. Usually what we ask, where you can call in, but what we usually do is send us an email, and we can go through it, look for stuff, tell you what we have. We can give you page counts, the link to how to pay for it. So we do a lot of our stuff online now, and that's really the result of COVID. Once COVID came around, we had to do about face, and it really has stayed that way. And I think you get better service really going through the email, because a lot of our requests we turn around the same day.
So when you send an email, you're basically sending your parcel number or?
Well, we won't do that type of research.
I just didn't know if you're starting, it's like, what type of information are you looking for to help us get started? Address, parcel.
Well, yeah, you could do that, send us the parcel number, or really the address is fine. We can look up the property but like I said, a lot of that you could start researching online with our databases and also the assessor site, because you can look up properties on the assessor site.
Yeah.
So, and a lot of times what happens is people will send stuff, and if it's not too in depth, we'll look at it. I mean, somebody comes, I want my land chained back to 1757, which we can't do. So.
Well, it is interesting though, because many years ago, I bought our property in '98, and I came to something at the library, and I actually got a copy of the microfilm or microfiche, that I have a copy of the actual original land grant, late 1700s. So it's a great property. So I kind of started the way back, but now I guess it sounds like more you have to kind of work.
Well, if you're in the area and you're starting from scratch like that, actually, I would probably encourage you to come in. That way you can work with us. And then we can show you the books and that, and start that way. But a lot of our research now is coming from, out of county or really out of state too, so. Nothing else? All right, well, one more slide. All right, you asked a question what Gary's, vision was, besides being, a professional archives and having a museum, having small museum displays. We also, in the last, actually since COVID, we've been able to have a lot of time. A lot of the time we weren't open during COVID, to develop brochures and trading cards. So what we actually done in the last 4 to 5 years is we developed themed brochures. Preserving Our Heritage is the new one that talks about what we have in our records we have about the Rev War and the courthouse, and a little history about the courthouse and the Rev War in Loudoun County. The other one was African American history of the courthouse. Once again, you can look at that. Talks about some of the famous cases that took place here, or some of the records we have. And all this is in the packet Shannon handed out to you. So we have that, and then we developed a courtyard walking tour. Because there really isn't any signs in the courtyard talking about the history of the courthouse. So we went about and did a walking map of the courthouse. And it takes you from 1757, although if you look at it, the last thing in there shows the skeleton of the new courthouse. Of course, that's been completed. So once we run out of those, we'll update it. The other thing we started about 4 or 5 years ago is every year we did between 7 and 10 history trading cards. So what we did was we took either records, our individuals from the county that were interesting, and made a card on them. These 4 up here for World War II, because it's the 80th anniversary of the end of the Second World War. We did a card on the POW camp. His name slips mine. That John Kincaid. This is really an interesting, very sad story of a Navy surgeon from Loudoun County. His dad was actually mayor of Leesburg prior to the war. The one next to it is Sprogue. He had family here and he was lost during World War II. It's a good story. Then the dedication of the World War II monument. So we do a series of cards every year. We have cards on the Revolutionary War, African American history, and also the courtyard. And in the very near future, we're going to have a box that's going to have all the cards in it, and that's one of the designs. What we're doing, we're gearing up for the DOI 250th anniversary of the DOI next year. And these trading cards, that's actually the court order on the front ordering to read the Declaration of Independence. So we've done that. This is our next program. We try to do maybe three First Friday programs a year, and we pick a theme. This one is Victory and Preservation. We had it earlier, what was it, in June? In June, it got rained out. So we said, my staff put too much work in it, so we're gonna redo it because, you know, the end of the war in Japan anniversary is actually coming up. And we're gonna have some of this stuff on display, but we're also gonna have John Fish back giving you demonstrations of in-house conservation. We'll have that big spa tank out there. John loves to talk about the spa tank, so yeah, so you just come there, and so you're gonna get a history and preservation overview there. So that's September 5th is the next First Friday for us, and it's gonna be from 6 to 8:30, depending on how many people we get, so.
Eric, the online community would like to know if there's a way to get the handout packet for those online.
Yeah, if they just email us and give us their address and we'll mail it to them. Here, I'll put this up for people who are watching this virtually. If you want to get to that website and see all the things we have in our collection, along with our newsletter, or sign up for our newsletter, just scan that barcode that code, and it'll take you to our website. And it worked. I tested it before. I was afraid it didn't. So yeah, if you go up and just take a picture of it. So. All right. Nothing else?
Thank you.
Well, thank you.
Web logis. Sorry, like looking at pictures.
Web logis? You really interested in that? Here, I'll pull that up. Wait for it.
You need assistance.
Oh, here it is. Okay. Oh, it won't open. Hang on, I'm trying to open the link up. Worked earlier. All right, here we go. Bear with me. You on the internet here?
Yes, you should be able to.
Yeah.
Go to the Chrome.
And with the
There we go. Oh, that's me. I don't want to look at my stuff. All right. Look, I'm from the generation that was between card racks and the first library computers. So I started off in card catalogs and then went to computers. So
To do that. Share your screen again.
okay. How do you do it?
Go. You don't mind.
Yeah, go ahead. Okay. My staff's better at technology than I am, so. All right, so this is the front page of the clerk's office here, and just come over to historic records, click on that. And over here, you'll see links for historic records, indexes, land and deed research, copy information, web resources, our events, and then our historic newsletter. If you sign up, we're trying to crank out one newsletter every other month right now. We just sent out our first one in a long time. So, web resources on here. We have links to the Library of Virginia, to the Thomas Balch. There's the real estate assessment, other county departments you might have to deal with for information. I didn't mention at the beginning, besides being historic records, if you come in and need a deed or something to your property, it might department takes care of all that. So we take care of modern records as well. Copies only, so. All right, that is the assessor site. And just. Okay, you can go in here. Okay. You can just pick any, okay, just pick any property here. That's the information you'll see. It'll give the person who owns it, the current deed. Down here is where you want to look here in the legal description. Sometimes they'll have more records, maybe plats of the subdivision or easements, stuff of that sort. But what's great about this, you can go to, getting ahead of myself here. You can go in here. So, if I can make that smaller. Is that oh, there it is. Okay. So, this is a subdivision here, obviously. But if you go under search, you can find parcel information. Oh, first of all, I'm gonna do this. Go under map, hit land, just hit land records. And then what that will do is all the things you see here, highlight, those are the properties. And then go under search, hit parcels, click on map, find parcel and plat information. So we just go to one here. There it goes. Notice how this pops up. That's that property right there in blue. And then you just click on this. And it brings you to the page with all the information on that property. But just a FYI on this, a lot of people think this is the actual boundaries. It's not. I mean, these are just drawings, not even drawings. It's just an estimate in the computer. If you want an official description, you have to find it with the property. You can't rely on that. The WebLogist can tell you all kinds of stuff. Go back on your map. You can see, you can find out where your election districts are, environmental, schools, public safety. I don't see cemeteries on this one. Oh, that's right. And then one of the other things that's nice to look at is the imagery. So you can go here. And that gives you the imagery. That's every year they do photograph the entire county, and that's an aerial shot. And
The other thing that's useful is the adjoiners. Especially if you have a hard time finding a property, sometimes you can look for a neighbor and then find it.
yeah, like I just did a joiner right there. See that property, the one in the middle is the one we looked at. If you click on adjoining lots, it points out all the adjoining lots with it that adjoin to it. It's fun to play with, and the aerial shots are wonderful because you can go back in time and look at how the property developed. You can go back as far as 1936 is the first aerial shot of the county that I could find. So, but before 2000, they still haven't loaded anything from the 90s or the 80s yet. So, but that's
under tools. You can go back to 1937.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, tools tab.
Mhm. There we go. There we go.
Then you just have to click on the map.
All right, there you go.
Yeah.
So there it is in 2024.
Some of the old ones don't have to bring up anything.
That's 1957, so. What's interesting about using the aerial one is a few years ago, we did an exhibit on the Manassas Gap Railroad that they started building through Loudoun County. And that got completed because of the whole Civil War. You can still actually go through the early aerial views like that. And some of the more current ones, you can actually see where the rail line was going through southern Loudoun County up through, who eventually ended up in, which is going to end up in Personville. So yeah, this is actually fun to play with. So, but
Well, they have images from the nineties and then.
I think so, because I've pulled some before a long, long time ago when we did a book. So that's a fun option to play with. Yeah, there's a lot more you can do with it. But like I said, I'm not tech savvy like Abigail was, because that's she's getting a master's. So, so all right. Anything else? All right.
Pat says, great information. Thanks to Eric and the Balch Library for providing this presentation.
And thank you. Well, please stop by and see us. I mean, you still have to go through court security. Do not bring phones. Computers are like Apple Watches. They're not allowed in the courts. But yeah, come down and see us, because you can pull all this stuff. I mean, or come out and see us on our first Friday.
Oh,